Boss mistreats his employee, but when he depends on him to save the company, he regrets his past actions deeply. Vance Strickland stood at the front of the conference room, his presence commanding and tense. The flickering fluorescent lights above cast a harsh glow on his sharp features as he scanned the faces of his colleagues. The air was thick with anticipation, each person aware that this presentation could make or break their project. His voice boomed, slicing through the silence like a knife. "Arlo, how could you let this happen? This error is unacceptable." Vance's eyes narrowed as he fixed his gaze on Arlo Finch, who sat frozen in his seat, his face flushing with embarrassment. The room was silent, every eye darting between Vance and Arlo, feeling the weight of the moment. Arlo opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. He had made a minor mistake in the report, one that could have been easily overlooked, but Vance had chosen to publicly humiliate him instead. I thought I double-checked," Arlo stammered, but the words fell flat against Vance's fierce demeanor. "Thought? This is a critical project, Arlo. You need to take this seriously." Vance's voice echoed through the room, and Arlo's heart sank. He could feel the eyes of his colleagues on him, their sympathetic glances only deepening his shame. As the meeting came to a close, Arlo stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He left the room in a daze, the sting of Vance's words still ringing in his ears. With each step he took, he felt the weight of Vance's scorn pressing down on him. The resentment bubbled inside him, mixing with a deep sense of betrayal. How could someone he had once respected treat him so cruelly? Vance, meanwhile, remained in the conference room, a sense of misplaced pride swelling within him. He believed he had done the right thing, that he had kept his team in check. The thought that his words might have consequences barely crossed his mind. "I had to set an example," he muttered to himself, dismissing the uneasy atmosphere that lingered in the air. His colleagues exchanged glances, whispering among themselves. "That was harsh," one murmured. "He didn't need to go that far." Yet Vance brushed off their concerns. In his mind, he had acted justly, ensuring that everyone understood the stakes of their work. However, as he sat alone in the conference room, a small part of him began to question his approach. Was it really necessary to humiliate Arlo in front of everyone? A flicker of doubt crossed his mind, but he quickly pushed it away. After all, he was the leader, and leaders had to make tough calls. The next few days passed in a blur. Vance threw himself into his work, but the nagging feeling of what he had done to Arlo lingered in the back of his mind. He focused on the project, determined to keep it on track despite the growing pressure from upper management. But soon, news came that shook him to his core. The company was facing a financial crisis. In a frantic meeting with the executives, Vance felt the walls closing in. "We need a solution, and we need it fast," one of the board members said, her voice tinged with urgency. Vance nodded, his mind racing. Suddenly, it hit him. Only Arlo had the expertise to save the project. The realization sent a chill down his spine. How could he ask for help from the very person he had just humiliated? The conflict within him grew as he weighed his options. He needed Arlo's skills, but the fear of facing him again was daunting. What would Arlo say? Would he even consider helping after everything? As Vance left the meeting, he couldn't shake the growing anxiety over his status and reputation. He had acted harshly, and now he might have to swallow his pride and reach out to Arlo. A knot formed in his stomach as he contemplated the uncomfortable conversation that lay ahead. The stakes had never been higher, and Vance realized he might have to confront the consequences of his actions sooner than he expected. A few days had passed since the tense presentation, but the weight of Vance Strickland's actions still hung heavily over him. The news of a severe financial crisis hit the company like a thunderclap. Vance paced back and forth in the sleek conference room, his mind racing with worry. The project he had so confidently overseen was now in jeopardy, and the stakes could not be higher. "Listen, everyone," he said to the upper management team gathered around the table, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "We need to address this issue now, before it spirals out of control. As the team discussed potential solutions, Vance's mind drifted. He could not shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. Then it hit him like a bolt of lightning. Arlo Finch. Arlo was the only one with the unique skills needed to turn the project around. The very same Arlo he had publicly humiliated just days ago. Vance's heart raced at the thought of reaching out to Arlo. He felt a mix of dread and desperation. How could he ask for help from the person he had wronged? What if Arlo refused? What if he laughed in his face? The discussion continued, but Vance's thoughts were elsewhere. He wrestled with the conflict brewing inside him. "I need to do this," he mumbled under his breath. But how? As the meeting came to a close, Vance made a decision. He would have to swallow his pride and go to Arlo. Later that afternoon, Vance found himself standing outside a small, bustling coffee shop. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, but he could hardly focus on it. His palms were sweaty as he pushed the door open, the bell jingling above him. He scanned the room until his eyes landed on Arlo, sitting at a corner table, engrossed in his laptop. Taking a deep breath, Vance approached, his heart pounding. Arlo looked up, surprise flashing across his face. "What do you want, Vance?" Arlo asked, his tone cold and guarded. Vance hesitated. I need to talk to you." Arlo raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "Last I checked, you were the one who didn't want me on the team." Vance winced. He knew he had no right to ask for Arlo's help after the way he had treated him. "I know I messed up," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But the company is in trouble, and we need your expertise." Arlo crossed his arms, skepticism written all over his face. "And why should I help you? You made it pretty clear how little you think of my contributions." "I was wrong," Vance said, his frustration surfacing. "I let my pride get in the way, and I took it out on you. But this isn't just about us. The project, it's at risk, and I can't do it without you." Arlo looked away, his expression conflicted. "Why should I believe you? You've never cared about anyone but yourself." Vance rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the heat rise in his cheeks. "I know I haven't been a good leader, but I'm trying to change that. I'm asking for your help, not just for me, but for the team, for the company." Silence hung in the air between them, thick and uncomfortable. Arlo's eyes narrowed as he considered Vance's words. "You really think I can just forget what happened?" Arlo asked, his voice low. "No, I don't expect you to. But if we don't act now, we could lose everything. I need you, Arlo. We all do." Arlo sighed, his defenses slowly lowering as he weighed the situation. "Fine," he said finally, albeit reluctantly. "I'll help, but don't think this means we're good. You've got a lot to prove." Vance felt a rush of relief mixed with anxiety. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "I promise I'll do better this time." As they began to discuss the project, the tension between them started to ease, replaced by a shared purpose. Vance knew the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope. Vance Strickland stood outside the coffee shop, his heart racing. He had not seen Arlo Finch since the disastrous meeting that had led to Arlo's abrupt departure from the company. The weight of his earlier actions hung heavily on Vance's shoulders as he pushed the door open. The bell chimed softly, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside him. He spotted Arlo sitting in a corner, his laptop open, a cup of coffee steaming beside him. Vance took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he knew would be an uncomfortable conversation. As he walked over, he could feel every pair of eyes in the coffee shop on him. He hesitated for a moment, but then summoned the courage to approach. "Arlo," Vance said, his voice steady but soft, as he reached the table. Arlo looked up, his expression a mix of surprise and irritation. "What do you want, Vance?" he replied, his tone sharp. "I need to talk to you," Vance said, pulling out a chair and sitting down without waiting for an invitation. He could sense the tension crackling between them. "Talk?" Arlo scoffed. You mean you want to tell me how I was wrong and you were right? Or maybe you're here to brag about your latest promotion? Vance swallowed hard. He could feel his old defensiveness rising, but he pushed it back. No, that's not it. I need your help. Arlo's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. Help? After you threw me under the bus in front of everyone, why would I help you? I know I messed up, Vance admitted, feeling a sting of vulnerability. But the company is in trouble, and you're the only one who can fix this project. I can't do it without you. Arlo crossed his arms, his jaw clenched. You expect me to just jump back in after what happened? You humiliated me, Vance. I walked out of that meeting feeling like a fool. I thought I was doing the right thing at the time, Vance said, his voice rising slightly. But now I see how wrong I was. I was too focused on my own image and not enough on our team. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Arlo looked away, staring into his coffee as if it held the answers. You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about the project. It's about trust. You broke that trust, and it's going to take more than a few words to fix it. I understand, Vance replied, his voice more desperate now. But if we don't work together, we could lose everything. I can't let that happen. With a sigh, Arlo uncrossed his arms and leaned back in his chair. You think I want to see everything we worked for go down the drain? I don't. But you're asking a lot from me right now. I know, Vance said, his gaze softening. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking for a chance to make things right. I need you to see that I'm willing to change, to be better. Arlo studied Vance's face, searching for sincerity. And what if I say no? What then? Then I'll understand, Vance replied, his voice quiet. But I won't stop trying to reach out. I owe you that much. For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of their history hanging in the air. The coffee shop buzzed with the sounds of conversation and clinking cups. But for Vance and Arlo, time seemed to stand still. I don't know, Vance, Arlo said finally, running a hand through his hair. It's not just about you needing me. It's about whether I can trust you again. I get that, Vance said, his heart racing. But if you give me a chance, I promise to show you that I can be a better leader. Together, we can turn this around. Arlo's expression softened just a fraction. It's going to take time, Vance. I'm not going to jump back in without thinking it through. I understand, Vance replied, relief flooding through him. Just think about it. Please. As Arlo nodded slowly, the walls between them began to crack, leaving a glimmer of hope in the air. Vance realized that this was just the beginning of a long road ahead, but for the first time, it felt like a road worth taking. As Vance sat across from Arlo in the cozy coffee shop, he felt the weight of his previous actions pressing down on him. The familiar smell of roasted beans filled the air, but the warmth of the place did little to ease the chill in their conversation. He took a deep breath, trying to gather the courage to speak. Arlo, Vance began, his voice steady but softer than usual. I know I messed up. I was harsh, and I shouldn't have treated you that way. He paused, searching Arlo's face for a sign of understanding. It's just, this job is hard. There are so many pressures. I feel like I have to be perfect. Arlo looked at him, surprise flickering in his eyes. Perfect? You think that's what you need to be? He replied, crossing his arms. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I lost my job because of you. The tension hung thick in the air. Vance swallowed, feeling his heart race. I know, and I regret it. I've been struggling with my own insecurities. I thought being tough would make me a better leader, but it only pushed you away. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated with himself. I realize now that I need your help. The company is in real trouble, and I can't fix this without you. Arlo's expression softened slightly, but his guard remained up. Why should I help you? After what you did. His voice was firm, but there was a hint of vulnerability beneath it. Because I need you, Arlo. You have the skills that can turn this project around. If we don't fix this, A lot of people will lose their jobs, including yours and mine, Vance answered, desperation creeping into his tone. I'm not just asking for your expertise. I'm asking for a chance to make things right between us. Arlo shifted in his seat, contemplating Vance's words. You really think I can help? He asked, uncertainty lacing his voice. I do, Vance replied earnestly. I've seen what you can do. I know I have a lot to prove, but I'm willing to try. I want to work together, not just as co-workers, but as partners. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken feelings. Arlo's thoughts raced. He felt a mix of anger and a strange desire to forgive. It's not easy for me to forget what happened, he said slowly, looking into Vance's eyes, searching for sincerity. I understand, Vance replied, his gaze unwavering. But think about our colleagues. They depend on us. If we can come together for their sake, maybe we can start to rebuild what we had. Arlo took a sip of his coffee, the warmth contrasting the coldness he felt towards Vance. You're asking me to put aside my feelings and help you save your project. Why should I care about that? Because it's bigger than just us, Vance insisted, leaning forward. This project could make or break the company. It's about everyone's future. We can make a real difference if we work together. Arlo felt a flicker of something inside him, a desire to rise above the pain and anger. You really mean that, don't you? He said, his voice softer now. Yes, I do, Vance affirmed, his sincerity evident. I know I have a lot to prove, but I want to show you that I can be better. I don't just want your help, I want your trust. I'm willing to earn it. After a long pause, Arlo finally nodded, his decision made. All right, I'll help, but this doesn't mean I've forgiven you. We have a lot to work through. A sense of relief washed over Vance. That's all I ask. Let's start fresh. As they began to discuss the project, the air between them shifted. The initial tension gave way to a tentative partnership, one built on the hope of redemption and the possibility of healing. In that small coffee shop, two men found a way to move forward, together. As the days passed, Vance and Arlo found themselves working side by side in the small conference room that had become their makeshift war room. The air was thick with a mix of tension and determination. Vance had cleared his calendar, putting aside his usual tasks to focus solely on the project. He glanced at Arlo, who was typing furiously on his laptop, his brow furrowed in concentration. Do you think we can salvage this? Vance asked, breaking the silence that had settled between them. His voice carried a hint of uncertainty. Arlo paused, looking up from his screen. It's going to take a lot of effort, but if we combine our strengths, we might just pull it off. There was a flicker of hope in his eyes, a sign that he was beginning to see the potential in their partnership. Vance nodded, feeling a surge of relief. I appreciate you being willing to help, even after everything that happened. His tone was sincere, a departure from the harshness that had once defined their interactions. Arlo shrugged, a faint smile appearing on his lips. Let's just say, I'm interested in seeing the project succeed. It's bigger than both of us. He returned to his laptop, and Vance felt a weight lift from his shoulders. As they delved deeper into the project, the atmosphere began to shift. Vance initiated a brainstorming session, encouraging Arlo to share his ideas without the fear of judgment. What do you think is the first step we should take? He asked. Arlo leaned back in his chair, contemplating. We need to assess the data we have. If we can identify the key issues, we can address them one by one. He glanced at Vance, gauging his reaction. Sounds like a plan, Vance replied, feeling a spark of excitement. They spent the next hour discussing strategies and breaking down the project into manageable tasks. Laughter erupted when Vance cracked a joke about the last-minute changes they had to make. I swear, we could write a book about this chaos. Arlo chuckled, a genuine laugh that surprised both of them. The art of crisis management, perhaps. He tapped his fingers on the table, warming to the banter. As they worked, moments of camaraderie began to emerge. Vance realized that he had underestimated Arlo's creativity and problem-solving skills. Every time Arlo proposed a solution, Vance felt his respect for him grow. "You really know your stuff," Vance admitted, sincerity in his voice. "I should have seen this sooner." Arlo looked down, a hint of embarrassment coloring his cheeks. "Thanks, but I owe it to the team. They always pushed me to think outside the box." Vance's expression softened. "I regret not recognizing that when you were part of the team. I let my pride cloud my judgment." There was a heaviness to his words, a recognition of the past mistakes they both needed to confront. "Let's not dwell on that," Arlo replied, his tone now more encouraging. "We have a chance to move forward now. That's what matters." He smiled, and Vance felt a flicker of hope. As the days turned into weeks, their collaboration deepened. They began to trust each other, sharing ideas freely. Vance discovered the importance of empathy in leadership, realizing he needed to be more than just an authority figure. He started to value Arlo's input, often seeking his opinion on critical decisions. "Why don't we present this together?" Vance suggested one afternoon, looking at the outline they had created. "I think it shows our united front." Arlo raised an eyebrow, surprised by the suggestion. "You really think that will make a difference?" "Absolutely," Vance replied, his confidence growing. "It's time we show the team that we're in this together." Arlo smiled, warmth spreading through him. "All right, let's do it." The two men exchanged a look that spoke volumes, an unspoken understanding that they were rebuilding something important. As they prepared for the presentation, Arlo couldn't shake the feeling of empowerment that had blossomed within him. He was no longer the man who had been publicly humiliated. He was now a vital part of a team working toward a common goal. In that moment, amidst the chaos and the work, Vance and Arlo found a sense of redemption. They were moving from the shadows of their past toward a brighter future, one that promised collaboration and respect. Together, they were not just two individuals. They were a renewed force, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The air in the office buzzed with anticipation as Vance and Arlo stood side by side in front of their colleagues. The project, once hanging by a thread, had not only survived but thrived under their combined efforts. Vance could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, but today felt different. Today held promise. "Thank you all for gathering here," Vance began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. He glanced at Arlo, who stood with an expression that mixed disbelief and cautious optimism. "I want to take a moment to reflect on what we have achieved together." Arlo felt a knot of tension loosen in his chest. He had never imagined this day would come, especially after their rocky past. He could hardly believe Vance was about to acknowledge him in front of everyone. The room fell silent, the usual hum of chatter replaced by a palpable sense of curiosity. "Not long ago, we were in a very different place," Vance continued. "Our project faced serious threats, and I was lost. But then, I realized that I could not do it alone." He paused, looking out at his team, then back at Arlo. "I need to give credit where it's due. Arlo Finch stepped up when it mattered most." A murmur of surprise swept through the room. Arlo's eyes widened, and he felt heat rise to his cheeks. Vance's words felt like a balm, soothing old wounds and igniting a flicker of hope within him. Vance gestured toward Arlo. "Without his unique skills and insights, we would not be standing here today. I regret my past actions, and I want everyone to know how vital Arlo has been to our success." "Thank you, Vance," Arlo managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. It felt surreal to hear his name spoken with such respect. He cleared his throat, gathering his thoughts. "I appreciate that. It feels good to be recognized." Vance nodded, his expression softening. "We have both learned a lot through this process. I have learned the importance of collaboration and listening to my team. Arlo, you have shown me that it's never too late to mend bridges." As the colleagues exchanged glances, a ripple of approval spread through the group. The tension that had hung in the air for so long began to dissipate. People started to smile, sensing the shift in dynamics. "Let's look forward," Vance said, his tone growing more enthusiastic. "We have a lot of work ahead of us, but I believe we can achieve great things together. This project has proven that we are stronger as a team." "We really are," Arlo added, feeling a surge of confidence. "If we can face challenges like this together, I believe we can tackle anything." The room filled with nods and murmurs of agreement. Colleagues exchanged encouraging smiles, and a sense of unity began to take root. Vance and Arlo, once at odds, now stood as allies, committed to a shared vision. After the meeting, as the team began to disperse, Vance approached Arlo. "Can we talk for a moment?" he asked, his tone sincere. "Sure," Arlo replied, curiosity piqued. They stepped into a quieter corner of the office. "I know it's just a start," Vance said, looking directly into Arlo's eyes. "But I want to work on our relationship. I want us to have an open line of communication moving forward." Arlo considered Vance's words carefully. "I'd like that. We've both made mistakes, but I think we can build something better from here." Vance smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across his face. "I'm glad to hear you say that. Together, we can create an environment where everyone feels valued." As they walked out of the office together, Arlo felt lighter. Hope bloomed in his chest, and for the first time in a long while, he saw the potential for a brighter future. They stepped into the sunlight, a shared understanding between them, ready to face whatever came next. In that moment, the possibility of redemption hung in the air like a promise, reminding them both that change was possible and that empathy could bridge even the deepest divides. Share this story if you believe that collaboration can mend even the most fractured relationships. Leave a comment about a time when teamwork helped you overcome a challenge, and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one.